In this project, I'll show you how to create this delicate emerald tea ring from PMC Pro. We'll start by making the ring shank. I need to roll a slab that's 20 cards thick, so I'll stack up all of my rolling frames, and that makes 20 cards, and I roll out a plain slab. And I'm going to texture it with my Carnations texture tile. I've cut this one in half so that I can use it on both sides. So I just sandwich the clay in between. And then I'm going to add a stack of 2 more texture tiles on each side that'll take the place of those 2 spacers. Then I'll put all but the number 4 spacer back on and roll that down, and that's going to give me 2 cards of texture on each side. And now I have my slab that is textured on both sides. I'm going to put this on a tough card. The next step is to cut out the inside of the ring. I'm making the inside of the ring size 10. PMC Pro shrinks quite a bit, and I need to make this ring 5 sizes larger than I want it. So that's the inside, and now I'm going to cut out the bottom of the shank. This is the part that'll be under my finger. So I'm going to line up the hollow rings template and get it exactly where I want and cut it out. You'll find a cutting diagram in our PDF files that'll show you how to cut this out, but the top of the shank is going to be thicker than the bottom. So the bottom is going to be nice and thin, very delicate, and the top is going to give us plenty of room to set our stone. And once I have this piece cut out, I'm going to go ahead and cut away the excess clay, being very careful that I don't mess up the work that I've done, and set it aside to dry. While the ring is drying, I'm going to go ahead and make the prongs. I'm going to start with a slab that's 9 cards thick, and then I'm going to use the same Carnations texture and roll that down to 6 cards thick. And then I need a strip that's as wide as the ring, and I'll cut 2 pieces that are about 1/4 of an inch long. And I'll set those aside to dry. Next, we'll refine the shank and we'll cut a seat for the stone. You can sand and refine the outside of the ring with a superfine sponge sander, and you can use any type of tool that you prefer to smooth the inside of the ring. Here's the stone that we'll be using. This is a lab-grown emerald, and it'll be oriented so that the 2 corners are held down by the prongs, and we'll cut a seat that fits the contour of the stone. The first step in creating a setting is marking the spot where I want to have the center of the stone. I'm using a 6mm stone setting burr to drill down about halfway into the thickness of the shank. Here I'm using a 4-cut triangle needle file to file a groove because this will match the contour of the square stone that I'm using. I'll take my time here and make sure I do a good job. Now I'll use the end of the file to get a little groove started on each side here so that the stone can set in, and then I'm going to go ahead and test fit this and see how I'm doing. And now I can make some adjustments if things aren't quite right. And that looks pretty good. So now what I'm going to do is just go ahead and use my Dockyard Carvers, the V-groove, to clean up and enlarge this seat just a little bit so that the stone fits perfectly. Next, we're going to refine and assemble the prongs. First, I need to check and see how much of material I want to take off. I'm going to cut a little notch out of here, and I'm going to use my 4-cut needle file, the same triangle shape again. I'm starting by just filing a straight groove that'll kind of give me a line where I need to follow, and then I'll turn that to the flat side and file that flat. So I'm going to remove most of this material here, leaving about 3 cards. And this is plenty because PMC Pro is very, very strong. Then I'll square up all the other edges and make sure this piece is nice and square. And then I can apply some paste that I mixed from my lump form. And I'm going to use my tweezers to position this piece exactly where I want it. And then I will make sure my stone is in the right spot. And then I'll apply a little pressure for a few seconds so that it bonds. Then I'll remove the stone because it's not fired with the ring, and I will go ahead and fill the seams and smooth those out and get ready to fire. Now we'll fire and pre-polish. Because PMC Pro contains copper, it needs to be fired in a special container in a bed of activated carbon. This box is made from a special material called no-flake firing foil that you fold up yourself and then fill it with activated carbon. Then I bury the piece under about a ½ inch of the activated carbon, put the lid on, and fire it in the kiln 1450 degrees for 1 hour. After the firing is complete, I remove the still hot container to a trivet to cool. And once it's completely cooled, I can remove the lid and retrieve my pieces. Notice that there's very little ash that was created here, and there's no mess whatsoever from the no-flake firing foil, so the inside of your kiln stays clean. Sometimes there will be a little piece of carbon that will get stuck in the nooks and crannies, and I just use a scalpel to remove those bits. Start by burnishing your freshly fired PMC Pro pieces with a brass brush. You can do this with a little bit of soap and water for lubricant if you like. Then my next step is to pre-polish with a 250 grit 3M bristle disc. And this will reveal any places where I need to perfect the surface using files and sandpapers. I'm going to use my half round ring file to clean up the inside of this ring and give it a really nice smooth finish. On the outside, I'll use the flat portion of the file to smooth the surface here, and I can clean up any imperfections. Then I'll file all the sides of each of the prongs, make sure that they're nice and square and flush. PMC Pro is very, very strong, and this is going to be a lot different than if you're used to working with the fine silver metal clays. This material is going to hold up in the tumbler. It's going to hold up during wear. It's very, very strong. And then I want to polish the entire ring with the Superflex Gray polisher. This is coarse. You could use any kind of polisher that you want. This one just is very effective for me. And after this, I'll finish up with the green, and then I'll buff it, and I'm ready to set the stone. To set the stone, I slide the stone in square and then turn it because it's setting in a sort of a diamond angle, and just turn it so that it locks into the setting. And I'll just kind of fool around with this for a minute to get it right where I want it, make sure that's locked in place. And now I will tighten the prongs by using a riveting hammer to just lightly tap on each of the corners of the 2 prongs. So there'll be 4 places that I'm hitting, and I want to be careful that I don't go too hard and crack the stone. But this will be enough. You can just check and make sure that your stone is nice and tight and continue hammering it until it's well set. Now I can give a final buff, and the ring is ready to wear.